Hi folks, thanks for joining me on this week's video of Christina Just Tried. We are going to try doing a sweet dough filled with cinnamon, sugar, and butter, topped off with some cream cheese icing, also known as a cinnamon roll. I got this recipe back in 2006. It's been with me for quite some time, so let's just jump right into it and let's go. I have 1.5 ounces of fresh yeast right here and 8 ounces of water, and I'm going to bloom the yeast until it is nice and dissolved. In a separate bowl, I'm weighing out 4 ounces of granulated sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 ounce of non-fat milk solids, and then I'm going to use 2 types of flour. The first flour is going to be bread flour, and we're going to use 1 pound of bread flour. And the second flour is going to be cake flour, and we're going to be using 4 ounces of cake flour. Whisk that up and set it aside. And then we're going to weigh out our eggs. We're using 2 large eggs, or by volume, 3 ounces of eggs. And then also 4 ounces of softened butter. In my mixer bowl, I'm going to add that yeast and water mixture along with all of my dry ingredients and beaten up eggs. I'm going to continue kneading this with the dough hook attachment until it becomes glutinous and when it all starts to come together. Once that happens, I'm going to slowly add in small chunks of that softened, unsalted butter. At first, it's going to slosh around the bowl and look like it's wrong, but give it a little bit and it'll become one cohesive dough again. When it does become nice and combined and cohesive, you'll take it off of the mixer and knead it by hand. To make sure all that butter you mixed in is completely combined into the dough, we're going to turn out the dough onto a lightly floured surface and continue kneading it by hand. When you knead it by hand, you get a better feel for the dough and how everything is combined versus it just being finished off in the mixer. Now I'm going to roll it into a loose ball and plop it into a greased glass dish. I used the butter wrapper to grease my bowl, but if you have pan spray, use pan spray. If you have oil, use oil. Use whatever you have. Then magically cover it with plastic wrap. I take a Sharpie to outline how big the dough ball is. I write down the time that I put the dough in the bowl so I know what time I started it, and let that dough ball ferment. It'll get bigger and then we'll go on to the next step. Here we're going to make our cinnamon roll filling, which is 4 ounces of brown sugar and granulated sugar, a tablespoon of cinnamon, and some nutmeg. Whisk it together and set it aside for later use. I rolled the dough into a rectangular shape. It was rolled out to 1/2 inch thickness, and lengthwise it is 14 inches. I took melted butter and I drizzled it on top, and then I brushed it along the outside edges. I sprinkled on the cinnamon sugar mixture. I made sure the top and the bottom 1/2 inch portions did not have any of that filling. And then you just roll it up. Make sure not to roll it too tight. Here I'm scoring the top every 1.5 inches, and this will end up yielding 10 cinnamon rolls. I have a little twine trick I use to cut the cinnamon rolls, but first you need to make sure you have a greased dish. Notice here I'm taking the twine, placing it under, and pulling both ends taut, cutting the cinnamon roll. You can also use dental floss if you don't have baker's twine. Cover your pan with plastic wrap and allow the cinnamon rolls to proof. You're basically letting them rest one last time before baking them off. The way you can tell when they're ready, they'll feel like a marshmallow. Bake the buns off at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 13 to 15 minutes. Rotate halfway through baking. Once they're nice and golden brown, place them on a cooling rack to cool completely. For the icing, you're going to whip together 4 ounces of butter. Once it's light and fluffy, scrape down the sides of the bowl and then add in 2 ounces of cream cheese. Whip it all together, scrape it down, add in half a teaspoon of both vanilla bean paste and vanilla extract. Whip it up and then add in 8 ounces of sifted powdered sugar. And once that's all combined, you have your cream cheese icing for your cinnamon rolls. To finish this off, we're just going to take some of the cream cheese icing, portion it on top, since there's leftover, might as well add it. Offset spatula. Nice little swirl. Now I did make sure that my buns were cooled off all the way before I iced them. I personally don't like when the icing's all drippy and melted. But if you want to ice them when they're warm, by all means, you do you and ice them when they're warm. You can see those little bits of vanilla bean in there. That's so pretty. And then to remove your cinnamon buns, you'll just cut them out. Take a knife and you cut, and then with the offset spatula just mine it out. So yeah, there you have it. Christina just tried making homemade cinnamon rolls with some cream cheese icing. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, a nice like, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I guess I'll see you next week. This one's for me. I don't know what I'm gonna do with all the others. Have a good week. Bye-bye. Hi folks, thanks for joining me. Okay, Grumpy Gills.